Yo, welcome to Six Layers, the comic signature show, period. I'm Mike the Six Layer, chilling with Mark the Honorable Villain. What up, fam?
What's up, Mike? I am excited.
Are you excited? I'm really excited because today we have a special guest. We have Jim Krueger joining us. But before we chat with Jim, please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and please comment. All right. Now let's get to the meat and potatoes of today. Our next guest is a veteran in the comic book business. You may know him for his longtime collaborations with heavyweight artist Alex Ross. That's right, the writer of DC's Justice and Marvel's Earth X series is here with us today. Ladies and gentlemen of the Staffsland, we bring to you the one and only Jim Krueger. What's up, Jim?
All is good. I'm happy to be here. Happy to see all the art you guys have behind your heads.
This is the Six Layer, so this is where all the funness lives. So we're going to just dive right on in, Jim. Thank you for joining us. Since it's your first time, I wanted to get your comic book origin story. How did you get your first gig in pro comics?
My first gig in pro comics was actually writing copy at Marvel Comics. I already had ideas of comics I wanted to write. Not that I thought I'd be able to do it, but I was writing advertising. And so I started at Marvel writing advertising for them. And then there were certain projects there, certain ads that seemed like they could be a little bit more. So bit by bit, I got to do things. But my very first comic, I would say, was either a custom comic for like Orkin, with the Terminator, or their version of a Terminator, or it was a short backup story that I did and brought Tim. Tim Sale had never worked for Marvel before, and I brought Tim in to draw it. And so there's this great little Nightcrawler, 10-page Nightcrawler story in the back of Excalibur 75.
Was it always the goal to eventually land in comics? So you were always a comic book fan and you wanted to do that, or how did that end up?
Not at all. I mean, part of that origin is, I guess, goes back to my dad had an auto garage and he would take me on tow jobs, to keep him company and stuff like that. And every time I'd climb up into his tow truck, there'd be a comic book there waiting for me as my payment for the job. So I grew up with it, and it's kind of like almost Rosebud. Like, comics have that sense of innocence to it, and my heart is in it. It's thoughts of dad. It's, going on tow jobs. It's all that kind of thing. So, but I never really dreamed or hoped that I could do it. It was more like, I got a job in advertising. I was doing advertising in Wisconsin, which was where I grew up. But a lot of that was like write an ad for the Coho fishing tournament, or write an ad for this new thing that'll unload silos of grain faster, or and this is embarrassing, but I also love saying it. I also wrote ads for Teat Dip, which is what you rub on a cow's udders before you milk them.
Oh, wow. How do you get in that mode?
So, here's, and this is where that served, even where it went. You learn how to tell someone's story in 7 words. You learn how, like a single headline. You learn how to tell the story of the company or the product really quickly. And that certainly lends itself to comics, in which, there's only so many words we can put on a given page.
Do you have any memorable copies that you did for Marvel? Is there one that you have that you felt very proud of?
You mean like advertising?
Yeah.
Yeah, there was an ad. There was an ad I did for Ghost Rider 2099 that the headline was "The Vicious Cycle Begins Again." And I was like, oh yeah, that was great. And then I did this really funny one. I did a Spider-Man one because there was a different Spider-Man book you could get every week. And so I wrote a line like, get bitten by the bug, by Spider-Man every week. And then there was another one I did for the Batman Daredevil team up that said, one became a bat, the other's as blind as one. And
that's cool.
It was fun. It was fun. I keep on thinking that maybe it's even possible if I can find enough or track enough of these ads down, I should do a mini book of my advertising for
That'd
the
be
year, for the years, just to have kind of like as another funny thing to sell at the booth.
That's so cool.
So, Jim, we started with the beginning, and now we're going to something recent. How did you begin collaborating with popular DJ Steve Aoki?
Well, a couple of years ago, I was one of the writers on Steve's book that he did with Tom Bilyeu and Impact Theory. And so I worked on that, and then I took my girlfriend to go see Steve because I knew that his manager would get us in the back. So like last year, we went in and we saw him and met him and stuff. I of course hadn't met him before, but introduced and stuff like that. And Steve was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm working on this thing, Hero Quest. I need someone to help me develop the characters and write the story, and you're right here." And so that's kind of how it happened. That's like it was just like one of those things where I'm glad I was there. I'm glad I went, and then it turned into a really a major gig because I'm working on book 2 right now.
Wow. Man, that's crazy how things add up. So like you just fell on his lap, right when he needed you.
There's been a couple things like that. Like I used to live in Montclair, New Jersey when I worked for Marvel, and I was on a bus on my way back, and I was talking to a guy on the bus and stuff like that, and I was showing off like early designs and sketches and stuff like that from my first book, Foot Soldiers. And he gave me his card and said, I'd love to, my partner and I, would like to look at this. Maybe, we're filmmakers. We might like to get involved in this, and stuff like that. And I said, well, would I know any of your movies? And he goes, yeah, we produced the Batman movies. And this was Michael Uslan. And then in the midst of that, he ultimately taught me how to write screenplays.
Wow.
So, just,
that's crazy.
And I mean, it doesn't always, like, these opportunities don't always happen like that. I mean, I feel like, I'm always hustling for work and I'm always like all that sort of thing. But what's good is learning how to get along with people. It's so important.
Right. Speaking of getting along with people, Jim, looking at your resume as a comic creator, you are Alex Ross's most frequent collaborator. I mean, the elusive one is what the collectors call him, the elusive one. How did that come to be? How did you start collaborating with Alex Ross?
Well, really, it's so funny because I moved to New York from Milwaukee to write advertising for Marvel, and then as soon as I got there, I found out that the promo department, the advertising department, also ran the conventions. So then they flew me back to Milwaukee for Gen Con when Gen Con was in Milwaukee, and my very first job, and this is the irony of it all, my very first job was promoting a project Marvel was putting out called Marvels. And so it became my job because Alex was there, because he came up from Chicago, of course. Alex was there to take Alex around and introduce him to places and different companies that were going to sell his comic books and show his artwork off so that people would be ordering it. And that entire time, we just talked about how much we love Jack Kirby and Jack Kirby's ideas and costumes that Alex's mom made him so he could dress up like Kirby characters. And one of the really fantastic things about that conversation is we talked about how much we both love Machine Man, which is the reason X-51 was the narrator for Earth X and had to be worked in.
You guys' passion for comics, and once again, being at the right place at the right time too.
Yeah, and I mean, I once had an agent tell me, because I was telling him how I was becoming friends with Michael Uslan, going back to the Foot Soldiers project, and he goes, Jim, no, it's show business, it's not show friends. And that guy's been wrong all the time. It is show friends all the way. I mean, you know, you can't put your passion into anything here and then work in such a collaborative way and have it, and hopefully not have it turn into some sort of friendship and some sort of ability to work together.
Man, curiosity is killing my cat now. Okay, so how did you get an opportunity to script and work with legends like Jack Kirby, Gene Colan, John Romita Jr., Paul Neary, and Ron Garney in Captain America?
I'm trying to remember the one you're talking about. But I think that was just like, well, there's a couple things related to Captain America. One, another text piece I did is in Captain America 12, which is when Mark Waid was doing that sensational run on Captain America.
Right, yeah.
And I did a backup origin on the Red Skull. And just
that's exactly what it was. Mark Waid had the main story, you had the backup story.
Yeah,
but how did you get that backup story? That's a hellified backup story. Yeah,
I don't remember because I think that was definitely pre-Earth X. I know that after, and I hope this isn't a spoiler for anyone after how many years on Earth X, but I know that the issue after Captain America kills the Red Skull, the punk kid Red Skull, I wrote this prose piece of Captain America burying the kid and speaking to him and apologizing for his failure that he couldn't find another way.
Oh, wow.
And stuff like that. And I remember that people were so affected by that. And sometimes I'm at cons and I'll still have someone come up and talk about that piece and say, that's the best Cap has ever been written.
Wow.
And it's like, when you hear that, I'm like, well, no, you're wrong, but thank you.
So Jim, let's talk about the Young Animal imprint. You did a backup story for Mother Panic with artist Phil Hester.
Yeah.
So Steve Aoki isn't the first musician you collaborated with. How was Gerard Way involved in those Mother Panic stories?
Well, I have like other things related to Gerard Way I should talk about. I met Gerard on a train out of New York. You know, it's just like these other stories. But we became fast friends, and this was before the band, and I hired him to draw for me and do some art for me, and I wrote him a Spider-Man story that then he drew, and I took around Marvel to show people what he was doing and stuff like that. And so we've been buddies for a long, long time. And what's also interesting is I'm the one who set Gerard up with Dark Horse to take Umbrella Academy in there.
What?
Yeah.
So you were his plug? Wow.
It's crazy.
So yeah, no. I did that. And so we've known each other for a long time, and he was talking about Young Animal, and we had more stuff that we wanted to do together for Young Animal. I wanted to do Witch Boy's cat, a story about Witch Boy's cat. I just thought that would be really cool and kind of playful and kind of play off the term even Young Animal. So that we were putting together, and some other things we were putting together. But he's like, look, I want to do a little backup. I want there to be a little backup thing in Mother Panic. See what you can do. And Gerard had the idea of Gotham radio. He said, yeah, just have it be like set in a Gotham radio station. You've got 3 pages per book. And then, of course, I had to tell a giant murder mystery story, 3 pages at a time, which was really fun. And we got great reviews. Gerard was always like, Jim, you should feel proud that you're getting these kind of reviews for a 3-page backup story that's serialized.
How was Phil Hester brought into the fold?
I had worked with Phil before because he did the second story arc of Foot Soldiers back in the day. And so when Gerard and I were talking about artists and stuff like that, I don't know if it was Gerard or me, but in the midst of it, we talked about Phil. Phil came up and like, yeah, that would be great.
Let's talk about Justice. Was Justice a prequel to Kingdom Come? Does it exist in the same, or is it standalone? How did that work when y'all were plotting that out?
I don't know. I mean, so much has been talked about as far as Kingdom Come goes too. So, um, Kingdom Come was Alex's response to all the new heroes and Image and all the darkening of classic heroes and how, you had all this stuff. And so it was a response. It was like, what are the classic heroes going to do when this surge of things that isn't heroic is kind of taking over, and was now very active, especially in the kind of 90s and early 90s, comic book industry.
I mean,
Justice, we were just like, um, and where I would always say like Earth X, I really drove that story. Like that was really my story from the get-go. Justice was really Alex's. Alex really wanted to do a Super Friends thing. He's like, and he was like, let's approach this in such a way that that we're not going to ignore continuity. In some ways, we're going to correct continuity the way it should be or should have been. But what we're going to do is we're going to think about who the Justice League characters are and how they're known throughout the world. So that was a point in which, Hal Jordan wasn't Green Lantern anymore. That was a point where Wally West was the Flash. That was a point where you had all these other identities in these characters at DC. So this was more like, no, the world knows Barry Allen is Flash. No, the world knows Hal Jordan is Green Lantern. We are going to do those classic characters the way the characters are known throughout the world. And then there was also a sense in which we both were like, we can't believe that they killed Aquaman's baby. It was so mean. Like that, like in the 70s, it was so harsh. And so that was one of those continuity things where it was like, no, let's suggest we're going to tell the story and then let's save the baby at the end. If you remember at the end of issue 4, there's that scene where you have Metalo and you have the Parasite and you have like a bunch of guys all gang up on Superman as he calls for help from Shazam. Like that was totally choreographed by Alex. Like he had that scene of how you could take Superman down, and there was even the battle at the end, which I want to say is like in issue 9 or 10. Alex had that pretty much so choreographed out.
Let's switch over to Marvel side. Can you explain the significance of the Earth X series within your career?
Well, what's really interesting is it seems like that's the book that everyone knows. That's the one that like it almost seems like, and I can't believe it's out of print again, because it almost seems more talked about today than when it even first came out. And when it first came out, Marvel was in shock. I think Marvel was also in shock at just how well it did. But Earth X got me meetings with Kevin Feige. It got me, all kinds of opportunities to speak into the MCU even as that was being developed. And Earth X has been, I don't always get a special thanks, but it's been used in so many things, including now the upcoming Fantastic Four movie.
Oh, wow.
But the design was the basis for Moon Knight. Of course, we know the Eternals movie used the giant celestial being born in the earth storyline as its ultimate climax. And even little lines I wrote over the years ended up in Thor, or people have been telling me that the older Spider-Man from the Miles Morales movie was based on the Earth X Spider-Man. And so it just kind of goes on and on and on. I'm so glad that there's so many people, Kevin Feige included, who really liked Earth X.
And so one more pivot. Let's turn to your indie stuff. The Runner and the High Cost of Happily Ever After. So what inspires you to take comics in these creative directions?
So, I mean, the High Cost of Happily Ever After and the Runner, both of those are drawn by this buddy named Zach Brunner, who I also helped get him start in the comic industry, but now he's working designing movie posters and stuff like that. So he's really happy about that. Anyhow, I just get ideas for different stories. I really do. Or I'm responding to something. I went through a divorce many years ago, and I felt like I wanted to write something about love, and I wanted to use some flowery language, and the only way that would really make sense to it, I made it really dark. So that's the high cost of Happily Ever After, which is really great, which I'm not announcing it yet, but there's something happening with it. Okay. Not on the film side, but a new way for people to get it. And both The Runner and High Cost of Happily Ever After are two projects that I kind of self-put together completely because, you know how I talked about before, maybe I need to have a book of my ads. You know, right. I always want to have something, when I do a convention, I always want to have something at the convention that people can't get anywhere else. I always want there to be something special at my booth, not only to talk about, but for someone to be like, wait, what's this?
Jim, you were a writer for Mortal Kombat Shaolin Monks?
Yeah.
How does writing for video games differ from comics and everything else?
Oh my gosh, it's so different. It's so collaborative. In so many cases with video games, the scenes are already written. You know, because the game, it takes so long to design the game and the action and stuff like that it was more like, it's more like you're kind of going in and you have this giant spreadsheet with all these little openings where characters have to say stuff and stuff like that. So most of it was, you know, character gets hit by a sword and you're like, ugh, you know, and you're spelling that out. So, I mean, that's not that dramatic, but like there are other aspects, like there's that whole animated section at the beginning of Shaolin Monks, where it's like you're writing a mini movie. And there are other pieces of that, you know, but that's like writing screenplays and stuff like that too, which I also do.
So it's like partially like Mad Lib, Ad Lib / screenplay?
Yeah.
So Jim, how has your time studying film and making film prepared you as a comic writer?
I started the film work after comics. In fact, I went to NYU between writing Earth X and Universe X, and that was really I did this great short film. You can even find it online. It's called They Might Be Dragons. And it's about a guy who's convinced that his boss is a dragon, and so he buys a gun and he's going to hunt him down and kill him. And it's got nothing to do with the fact that he lost his job the day before.
Last question. This has been awesome. Is there anything we haven't discussed that you would like to share with your fans, Jim?
I should say that a Foot Soldiers omnibus is in the works, and that'll be like a Kickstarter thing, a really giant, big, and I'm writing almost, I want to say 60, 70 new pages of story to go with it. And just like I always had kind of young up and coming artists working on Foot Soldiers, you know, it was the beginning of Mike Oeming's career. It was kind of the beginning of Phil Hester's career. No one knew Steve Yoel at all, even though I loved his art so much from Grant Morrison's Zenith from 2000 AD. Like, I've always tried to give new people chances, and so some of these new stories that are going to be in there, people are going to get chances finally. And even if someone's kind of just on the periphery of Foot Soldiers or being a fan of it, or they're like, oh, am I going to spend the bucks that a big hardcover omnibus is? The one thing I am going to say is I'm also writing a lot for it that's going to be like this is my story. This is how I got into the industry. This is how you can get into the industry.
Oh, wow.
It's more like it's going to include this sense of, if you liked Earth X, if you like Justice, if you like what I'm doing with Steve Aoki, you're going to see the seeds of me figuring out how to write when I wrote Foot Soldiers. Like, it'll be as much a secret origin of me as it is like kind of a, this is how it happened, this is why I'm doing it, you know, all that kind of thing. And plus, Foot Soldiers is great. Like, I still get people at cons coming up and saying, yeah, I know Earth X, you're famous for all this stuff, but man, Foot Soldiers is my favorite. When is there going to be more of that?
Man, okay, you mentioned cons. Are there any cons on the horizon for 2024?
Well, I'm definitely going to be at Comic-Con, but I don't think I'm going to be set up there.
And you're out in LA, right? So like LA Comic-Con, what else is coming up this year?
Yeah, that could be December. In January, I usually do the New Orleans one, but that's just because I want to go to New Orleans.
Jim, thank you so much for joining us, man. You're always welcome here on the Six Layer Station. This was great, man. I can't wait to pick your brain again. Well, that's all for our show. If you like what you see, please subscribe and hit the like button. This is Six Layers. I'm Mike, speaking for Mark and Jim Krueger. We are out. Peace.
Six Layers.